Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Into the Terminal. Today, we're going to be talking about AI. So, Nate, have I just been replaced by AI?
I mean, are you surprised? We have to talk about AI, right? Isn't it like the whole world is talking about it, so we have to. Have you been replaced? I don't know. You still look and sound like Scott. Although what I know,
Okay, very good. I mean, what does Scott even do anymore?
yeah.
Um, but so today we wanted to spend some time talking about a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 new feature, which is Command Line Assistant, which is a AI augmented, available on the command line utility for helping you with your Linux systems. Um, and we'll talk some more about like how to make best use of it. But we're going to start off with some examples. So, Nate, are you ready to jump into the terminal?
I think I am. The real question is the command line assistant ready for us to start asking it a bunch of questions?
Isn't it always? It literally is a robot waiting.
It's always ready, always waiting. Okay, so there's a number of things you can do with the command line assistant, and there's probably a bunch of things that it will do that we're not even thinking of today. But we're going to try to cover kind of a broad spectrum of stuff that you might want to ask the command line assistant. So we're going to start with, can we have it make us either a fully functional or maybe just the start of a script to do things, right? So sometimes, you're working at the terminal, you do a thing. We always had a motto when I was working in the sysadmin days. It was, if you have to do a thing, go ahead and do it. But if you have to do it more than once, you should make a script. So can we have the command line assistant write us a script? Now, what I'm asking it here, and if you're not familiar, you invoke the command line assistant with the letter C, and then you ask it a question inside of quotes because, well, you're still at a bash prompt. And if you don't put it in quotes, it's going to treat those spaces like delimiters. So, don't do that. So we're asking you, can you write me a bash script that will check the status of the SSHD service and restart it if it's failed? Now, I get it. You probably don't want to make a script that does this. You probably want to figure out why SSHD is failing and maybe monitor it better. But this is, an example. Just I wanted to see what it would do with this sort of a question, right? And we're going to hit enter, and it's going to think about it. Now, the thing with AI is you're never guaranteed that you're going to get the same answer twice. So I asked it this yesterday, and it gave me a pretty basic shell script, and it looks like it's giving me the same one today. So that's good. And you can see here, it's spit out a bash script, and it's even highlighted in Markdown if you were to like copy it and paste it into something that parses Markdown. But you can see here that the script, it has the proper syntax and formatting as a script. It even used some indentation. You may argue as to whether it's supposed to use spaces or tabs, but whatever. The AI must have its own preference. But you can see here, it's sort of doing what I asked it to do. I asked it to make a script that'll identify if SSHD is down and restart it if it is, right? In this case, it's checking if it's down and it's reporting out whether it's down. So I could then take this script and continue to flesh that out a little bit more. But it actually used a pretty good syntax here, and it's using systemctl is active to check if SSHD is up and running. And then it's checking the status, whether it's active or not, right? Now, I'd have to check. Scott, does is active check if it's running or just if it's enabled? Did it get it wrong?
Active means it's running. And then the other thing is, I think it is actually doing what you asked it, because below that, in that if statement, it says start. Systemctl SSHD start. So if it's not running, right, it's not.
Oh, yeah, there you
active,
go. I missed that. It is doing what I asked it to do. So there you go. So if it's down, it'll actually try to start it back up again. I just missed that one little line there. So yeah, it did do what I asked. That's awesome.
And in reality, I would probably have asked for like a systemd unit change to like do the restart there, because that would be the like more RHEL way.
Exactly, like I said. But I specifically asked it for a script, and that's what it gave me, right? It's not there to tell me that I've asked it for the wrong thing, which is probably what like the senior admin would have done if I asked them, right? But the thing I like about this is it doesn't just give you the script. It also goes on and says, here's how you use the script, right? Because you're going to have to save it to a file. You're going to have to make that file executable. And then it says you could run the script like this. And I thought yesterday when I tried it, it suggested putting it in cron, but I don't think it is doing that today. Yeah. So
Well, it lacks the in your question, did you say periodically or something like that? Did you tell it something that would give it to believe
I did not.
like repeatedly run it?
Let's see if I can make it do that. Now we're going off script already, Scott.
Yeah, well, let's hold
me?
this until
Okay, we'll hold it for later. Okay,
because I know
hold
that
that
one
for
of the
later.
topics we're going to talk in the deeper dive is like asking better questions to get better answers.
Okay, so I gave it a relatively vague set of parameters there. I didn't say what language I wanted that written in. I didn't say, like that it should run periodically. So what I thought I would do is make another one, asking it specifically for a Python script. So I'm asking the command line assistant, can you write me a Python script that adds a new user based on command line input? Okay. And when we ask it that, it thinks for a moment. And yesterday it did this pretty well. So we're going to see what we get here. All right. I also like how it says always review AI generated content prior to use. That's a very nice disclaimer that we've added there. So here we go. It's written us a Python script. Now, I'm not as good at Python as I am in Bash, but this looks sane to me, right? It's making a function that adds the user, and it's actually got some logic in here to like make sure that the thing did its job, right? With a try statement here. There's an exception if it has an error, right? So that's actually not bad practice. And you can see that it takes command line input using, let's see here, where was it? I thought it was using the one it made me yesterday, it was using the command line arguments to fill it in. Now I'm trying to parse all this. Yeah, if user
So it's in
username,
the
where does username get set
run,
here? What's that?
Subprocess run executes the command. And so up in the command definition, that's where your username is getting stuck in there.
Look at that. It even has the username. Yeah, string user ID, username. It doesn't ask me for a password. I thought the one yesterday asked me to input a password as well.
Oh,
so
well,
again, well, I mean, you're right. I did not specify a password, but I thought it asked me for it yesterday. I should have jotted down. I should have copied the one it gave me yesterday. And we could have compared to today. And then it even gives me examples of like how the thing will work, which is pretty cool.
So everything that we just showed you, right? This is like normal Ask AI stuff, right?
Right.
You could put these same requests in ChatGPT and it would give you these types of responses. So Nate, why would someone use command line assistant if they can just use other AIs to do the same stuff?
So I would argue there's two good reasons. One of them is that it's right here at the console, right? If you're at the console already and you're trying to do a thing and command line assistant is already installed, you can just ask it here. But the other and probably more compelling thing is that the command line assistant is trained on Red Hat specific data. It's actually trained on things like our knowledge base entries and documentation for our products. And actually, when a request is made, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the future. Not in the future, but in later in the show. I guess that is the future. It actually adds in the customer base, or sorry, knowledge base articles and whatnot from our documentation as context when it submits this into the AI to be parsed, right? So the answers you're getting back are actually, colored by all of Red Hat's knowledge for the past, 30 years or whatever that we've been around. So to kind of show that, we have a couple examples here that are a little more Red Hat centric, and the one I'm about to show you is one of those. I'm going to ask it to use the firewall system role to open a port for me. Now, obviously, the firewall system role is not 100% Red Hat centric, or Red Hat centric. You can use those system roles on more generic platforms, but it is a thing that's pretty common on top of RHEL. So let's paste this in here. I'm literally asking it, can you use the firewall system role to open port 8080? And again, yesterday it did a pretty good job. It gave me an Ansible playbook. We'll see what it does today. Here we go. So it's actually giving me a playbook that'll call the firewall system role. It even made up a host. I didn't notice that yesterday. You'll have to replace that with your actual host that you're trying to run this on. But I didn't give it a host, so of course it had to put something in there. It just made one. And here you go. It says firewall zone, right? Whether it's permanent or not. It's got the port. It opens it to everything because I didn't tell it to be more specific than that. So there we go. And then it even tells you how to run it through Ansible Playbook. So I kind of like it. How we doing so far, Scott? Anybody have some really compelling things that we want to get into when we get to the deeper dive?
Yeah, when we get to I'm collecting, so like we can.
You're collecting. Good.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to show you, obviously we've had it generate things. We've had it make me a script, make me a playbook, that kind of stuff. But what about troubleshooting? Here, let's clean up the screen here. We're going to try to start up HTTPD, and now I have intentionally induced an error in the Apache configuration in this case, and it can't start. Now, we could start by looking at the journal because we know that, right? We know, and obviously I know exactly what's wrong here, so I could fix it pretty easily. But imagine that you don't know. Imagine you have no idea why it's not working. Imagine that you're the junior admin and you've been set to the task of like building a new machine or fixing a machine that's been long broken, and you don't have the senior admin sitting there looking over your shoulder. And you're like, what do I do? How do I fix this? So obviously this gives you a hint. You can use journalctl to look at the service. But what I want to do is I'm going to ask the command line assistant to parse that log for me and tell me what's wrong. So what I'm doing here is I'm using journalctl. I'm turning off the pager because I don't want it to go into a pager, because I want to take the output of it and pipe it through the command line assistant. So I'm going to pipe it through C. Why is my HTTPD service failing to start? And what that's going to do is it's going to take that log output. Now you could trim that down further, and you probably want to. In my case, this is like the only thing in the log is this error, but you'll probably want to trim it down to the error, right? Find the error and either copy paste it or trim it down using head and tail or grep and awk and sed and whatever you want to do to try to get that out of there. But here we go. We can see it's identified that the error is that the server root is incorrect. And it's suggesting that what I do is I edit the Apache configuration file, that I fix the server root to point to, well, it's pointing to etc httpd. I don't think that's where it's supposed to go. Oh, wait, no, I did modify that one. That is the right one. So it did identify the proper one. And then it's telling me to start up HTTPD. So now if I were to go, what did it say? Well, I'm already on that line, 34. So yeah, it was server root right here. etc htt blah. It's just because I just truncated it to make an error here. If I change this back, and then now it should work. There we go. So the command line assistant saved my day. I don't have to go to the senior admin and look like a fool. All right. Let's see here. How about SELinux? We've got an SELinux example here. And this is one of those where it gives you the right answer, but it also goes down an extra path that maybe it doesn't need to. We'll let you guys be the judge of that. So we're asking it, SELinux is blocking port 8008 for my web server. How do I fix it? And you can see here that if we scroll back to the top of the response here, it's telling us to check the current SELinux policy for the port. It's telling us to use SEManage, or telling us how to check that by asking SEManage. Let's see. And then it says if port 8008 is not listed, you need to determine the correct SELinux type for the port. So it's having us do an SE search to find the type. and then it's asking us to change the SELinux type for your custom port, right? So this is not bad stuff. And then it's having us start up, or sorry, it's checking for the process that HTTPD is running as, so that we can need to update the policy for the web server, right? So this is where it goes. There's an easier way to get this done, right, Scott, that we were talking about before the show, where it's going down a path that will probably work. Sorry, what?
Like, so scroll up a little bit.
Sure.
Right there on 3. Yeah, if instead of the type my custom port T, we actually just copied what it said earlier, HTTP port T, and ran that, done. So I think it's actually like giving us a placeholder where we could substitute some of the information it told us in steps 1 and 2.
Right.
But we have to know that like it's now kind of changed to talk about placeholder. And as we follow the instructions, we're really talking about HTTPD port T
right.
for these
but
things.
It does seem to happily continue with the instructions. And I'd have to try this to see if it works, but it has you changing stuff that maybe it has you going deeper than maybe you need to, is my point.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, that's why we have that little blurb at the bottom, right, Nate?
Yeah,
Always,
right?
Yeah, generated content prior to use.
All right. I've got one more example, and this one is very Red Hat centric. And that's why we wanted to show it. But so let's say you're on a system, you've installed a package from AppStreams, and you probably know, maybe you don't know, but you might know that AppStreams packages don't always have the same lifecycle as a full release of RHEL. So packages that are installed from the main repositories of Red Hat Enterprise Linux have that 10-year lifecycle along with RHEL. The AppStream packages don't necessarily have that. In fact, I would say most of them probably don't. They have shorter life cycles because they're expected to move more quickly. But maybe you don't know the status of a certain package that you have installed or that you're about to install. And for that, I thought, let's ask the command line assistant if it can give me lifecycle information. So I'm asking it, what is the lifecycle for the Node.js 16 package in RHEL? Now, I know that this one is out of support, but I wanted to see if the command line assistant does or not. And when I hit enter, notice that I just said package in RHEL 9, right? I'm not giving it a ton of context here. I'm just saying, here's the package name, and I didn't even give it the right package name. There's supposed to be a dash in there. It's supposed to be Node.js-16. And what it's giving me is the general lifecycle information for RHEL. And I think that's because it couldn't 100% identify like what repository I cared about, what package I really cared about. It just didn't have the logic to be able to figure out, is Node.js 16 that AppStream package, or is it something that was supposed to be included with RHEL? I just don't know. So it defaulted to giving me the general lifecycle for a release of RHEL, which of course is not 100% the right answer, although it probably would have gotten me to the right answer if I went through this and started digging deeper. But if I refine my question a little bit here, and we ask it, what's the lifecycle for the Node.js-16? I'm putting the proper name for the package now. AppStream package in RHEL 9. And this actually gives us better information because it's going to point me to, or at least yesterday, it pointed me to the AppStream lifecycle information. All right, the life cycle for the Node.js 16 application stream package in RHEL 9 is determined by the life cycle of an application streams, or of the application streams in general. For detailed information, it sends me to the proper page for the AppStreams lifecycle, right? So it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it gives me any dates for the specific package Node.js 16. It just refers me to the lifecycle information for AppStreams to get the information. And sorry, what's that?
Not super helpful.
I mean, it's helpful in that it gets me to the right place, but it doesn't necessarily give me the dates that I really care about, right? I included a third one here, and I honestly forget why I included a third version of this question.
You should try it because I tried it today, and I think that will make everyone happy.
Yeah. So what is the life cycle for the Node.js 16 package? And once again, I forgot the dash, but I think I included it because it actually, for some reason, gives us better results. Okay, here we go. Let's go back to the beginning.
And there's what
There
you
we
really
go. There's what I really wanted. So in this case, being more specific didn't help. I don't understand, Scott.
I think it's using the right combination of words. It's like Google foo, right? Like use the
Yeah.
right combination of words and you get different results. And sometimes they're better and sometimes they're not as good.
Oh, somebody in chat's asking if we're supposed to be selling a feature or pointing out the flaws. Look, Into the Terminal isn't about selling features. Into the Terminal is about being real.
That's right. And like learning skills.
Right. So, all right, that went a little bit longer than expected for the critical path, but here we are.
But I think one of the big things to take away is Red Hat for a long time has been talking about AI, and their philosophy for AI is smaller models trained better. And I think that that's what we're seeing in action here with Command Line Assistant, right? Like if you ask ChatGPT about Node.js 16 lifecycle, like what are you going to get back? Who knows?
That's true. That's true.
Right? If you ask ChatGPT about SELinux, like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of public SELinux stuff. Maybe that'd be all right. But we're getting like more RHEL answers. And so Command Line Assistant does pretty well at that. So why don't you spare us a like? And also, if you're a subscriber and you liked what we've done so far, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and you'll know that we're doing other things as well. But in the deeper dive today, we're going to get more into this topic. We're going to talk about things like asking better questions to get better results.
Right.
One of the questions that I haven't seen in chat that I was really expecting to see in chat is like, well, what data is being sent to this AI? So let's talk some about that.
Yep.
Nate, you already touched on training, so we can just kind of circle back and talk about how the assistant is trained and kind of some of the mechanics of how it works. And then we'll do some additional examples. So stay with us as we transition into the deeper dive. All right, AI.
It's coming for us all, right?
It is. Although I think one of the questions we had in our episode guide, because shockingly, we put together an episode guide where we thought about things before showtime.
We did.
Was, does this replace my junior admins? And I think from the critical path, we can actually make a definitive statement on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say no, especially especially the way it is today, right? Because today it doesn't actually execute anything. It gives you suggestions. It gives you information you can go on. It gives you, like I said, we can have it generate a script or something for us. But somebody still has to be there to ask the question. Somebody still has to enact that question or enact the result, right? Someone has to review it, make sure that it's still okay to run on your systems, right? So no, especially not the way it is right now. It does not replace a junior admin. And I don't know that I could be pontificating here, but I don't know that that's the goal. The goal here is to augment your junior admins, or your folks who are perhaps not junior, but maybe they're more well versed in a different operating system. Maybe they're even more well versed in a different distribution of Linux, and they just need to learn how to do things the Red Hat way. And this is here to help those folks out, not replace them.
Yeah, and I would go even a step further and say that it's absolutely not to replace people. It's to allow people to operate better and faster. So,
Right.
and one of the examples that we have later on that I'm going to do, I'm going to ask it to write me a script, and it's going to be fairly involved. And when I first tried this a couple months ago, I was like, huh, it's actually a nice looking script with comments and indentation and some error handling. And, if I actually had to write this, it probably would take me, I don't know, close to an hour to get here, right? Because I'd like
Right.
write the initial base functionality, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I should probably check to see if it has the right inputs. So I'd put in some error handling and like, oh yeah, I should probably put some comments in there, and then come in and put some comments in. And so, asking the AI was, I don't know, 30 seconds
Yeah.
for something that would have taken me an hour to kind of iterate through and get to the same result.
Right.
Now,
And then you take that script and use it as a base for what you're going to build, or maybe it's ready right out the gate, and then you've saved yourself an hour or two.
exactly. And I think that's the real power of command line assistant is like saving me time, right? Automating the drudgery of writing this thing or trying to remember the options for a thing. I use it a lot for that. Like,
Yeah.
especially complex things like iSCSI initiators. Ugh.
Yes.
So that's, I think, where the power is. Now, junior admins are another kind of question mark because we saw, like, in a couple of the answers, you had to read it and do a little bit of interpretation. You couldn't just copy and paste everything it said.
Right.
So, for your junior admins, I would say it's still important for them to read through it. It may even be important for them to test it in another environment before they take it to production.
Right.
Because how do they know whether it's a hallucination or like a mistake, or they need to do something different if they're not paying really close attention? And you don't want them to just like wholesale execute stuff somewhere else that you really care about. That
Yeah.
said, like when I've been asking it to do things, I've learned new commands that I didn't know.
Right. Right.
And so that I think that having it assist, all of a sudden you start to grow your command lexicon, right? Your catalog of commands that you know. Like I had never used ch password before, but it used it in a script that I asked it for, and I was like, huh, never seen that, but
Yeah.
okay, it works. Wow,
Learn something
okay,
new every day, even from the robot overlords.
exactly.
And
Um,
this actually leads right into another popular question we've been seeing, and that is, can the CLA introduce issues if blindly followed? And I mean, I think we've kind of already touched on that. The answer is absolutely, it could, right? The CLA is based on our knowledge base, right? So it should be more accurate than, some, whatever chatbot that you have, you can find on the internet. But even still, you could easily, even if you're just searching our knowledge base for something, you could come across instructions that were based on RHEL 4 that aren't going to work on your RHEL 10 machine, right? And if you didn't properly ask the CLA, the command line assistant, for what version of RHEL you're asking for, it could find that RHEL 4, because it thinks it's the most relevant thing to show you. And then you follow those steps and it's like, wait, these things don't work because the commands don't exist anymore. Like, what's this etsy init directory? This doesn't exist. Right.
right. Um, but I think that also plays into one of our other questions that we put in our plan, which is the data that it sends, right?
Right.
So currently, command line assistant looks at the thing in the quotes, and
Right.
whatever.
Or the data you've piped in, like I did in my example earlier.
Right. So you control the data that's being sent to the AI backend for resolution. It also uses a RAG model. So Vincent actually asked about, do I get the same session? Can I ask it questions that are related to questions in the past? And so the difference that we're seeing in the answers, like Nate said, well, yesterday it said this, and today it's saying something similar but different, is because of the sessions not being persistent, because we're not storing data about you, right? We're taking the data that you're sending us in the quotes or through the pipeline, and we're asking the AI model and retrieving an answer. It's not taking additional data about your system or you or your sessions and storing it to be able to provide that additional context. And we've been talking about like, should we? Especially things like what version of RHEL are you running, right? To
Right.
avoid the thing Nate was just talking about that you get a RHEL 4 response. Um, I, right now, we're kind of handling that by like, put your RHEL version in the question.
Yeah.
And there you go. You told it.
Right.
Because people are, concerned about data leaving their machine in their environments and going to somewhere else.
Especially when AI is involved, because people are very touchy about, what not only what data is going into the AI, but what happens to that data. Is that data then retained? Is it used to train the model? Does is that data going to be spit out to some other person when they ask a similar question? Like is environment data about my environment going to end up with somebody else? So those are important questions.
And Granite Penguin asked the next, clear follow-up question, which is, how do I point it at something that's not?
This is everybody that I have talked to. I mean, there's got to be an 85 to 90%, right? I tell them about CLA and they're like, can I run that in my data center? The answer currently is no. But
so it actually takes your query and sends it off to a Watson X backend via API calls and stuff to connect to the model that we're using, and then you get your response back. So you need to have internet access, and you can't. Thank you, Apple. You can't change the model, right? It's a Red Hat model.
Right.
On the roadmap is allowing people to swizzle the configuration of Command Line Assistant to go to another place of their choosing. But that doesn't exist today.
Right. And even further down, there's people thinking about, can customers then customize the model to match their preferences, right? Like their standards or whatever. Again, that's way further out. Number one would be, can we let people run this in their data centers? And to that, like I said, product management has heard the question because we got it a million times at Summit.
When Nate says in the data centers, he means, can I run it locally?
Yes, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Not requiring external factors.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see, a couple other questions. Man, there was a good one back in here, and I've now lost it. Oh, somebody asked for a specific script, so we'll try that maybe a little bit later. Okay. Oh, we already covered Vincent's same sessions thing. So I mentioned that, like, if you ask at different times of day or another day, it's a different session. So it has no context for the questions asked previously. Also, like, there's a limit to how much data you can send. So once we hit that limit, it'll actually roll over to a new session as well. So even if you're asking a series of questions, you may see that it loses session context. But again, that's by design, right? We're choosing to not send a bunch of data. We're choosing to not track these sessions and make them unique to you for managing everybody in aggregate.
Right. And we had an interesting question that came up in the research before this episode that people are asking around on the internet. And Scott, you may have some opinions on this one. Will the CLA impact my ability to pass exams?
So I actually have had discussions with the Red Hat training and certification teams on this.
I figured you have.
Yeah. So essentially, Command Line Assistant today will not be included in the exam environment for certification exams. And that's because it requires internet access. And that's something that is not offered in the exam environment today.
Right.
The other thing is, like, and I was talking with the senior manager of certification that manages like RHCE and RHCSA. I said, I would feel really terrible if somebody did a thing on their exam that the Command Line Assistant told them to do, which ended up being incorrect. Right. And so after a little bit of chit-chatting back and forth, I think the decision that we had arrived at was, when we get to that locally running model, that's when they're going to reassess whether it should be available in the exam environment or not, right? Because then they can determine like what stuff it's trained on, and then they can offer it and have a consistent experience within the environment, so that they make sure that that people don't get disadvantaged by using it.
Right.
All right. So I had a whole bunch of things on, like, asking better questions and getting better results. So we can jump back into the terminal if we want to try it out.
We could certainly do that. Oh, see, I was jumping ahead of you there because I saw you trying to get your notes ready.
All right. So And while we're typing this, Nate, why do we call it C?
C, I thought it was because it was short for command line assistant, and we were trying to keep it really like concise so that people didn't have to remember some crazy command. No, C is the symbol for the speed of light.
Yeah, so we originally started working on this program as part of an initiative inside of Red Hat called Lightspeed,
Yeah,
which is where we use AI to like augment things. And if you're familiar with the Einstein equation for energy, E equals mc squared,
right.
where C is the constant of light speed, and this is part of the Lightspeed initiative, so they chose the constant of light speed, right? Yeah, Shantanu says it, super nerdy.
Yes.
All right. So here's
By
my
the way,
question.
if anyone had questions that we missed in the chat, if you throw them into the chat again, I will try to make sure we get them after Scott's demo.
So make me a script to add a user. I want to pass the username as an argument, set their password to a random value that I'll log in a file, and set the user's password to be required to change on first login. Right. So I'm asking it to do some user managery scripty things. Let's see what comes back out the other side. And it'll do a pretty good job of hitting all of these component asks. But not always does it choose the best way to solve it. So, for example, I said, make a random password. So here's what it chose to make a random password. Yeah, man. Nate, when you get your first password for your administrator and it looks like this, you're going to love typing that thing in, right?
That's an awesome random password.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. All right. Cool. The other thing that it did that I found interesting in this, it actually just like put it random file. Like this doesn't exist on my machine. In an earlier
password.log. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually put it in temp. Which I was like, no, we should not put password information in a world writable temporary directory. That's terrible.
Everybody can read and write temp. That's a great place for it. Well, it learned. Now it's putting it in a directory that doesn't exist. So you have to figure it out.
Yeah. So those are the two things that like I saw right off the bat, right? But realize again, as we talked about it, as we transitioned here, right? Notice that it's got this error handling to make sure that the username was passed as an argument. It did the things I told it to do, right? It made a random password. It put it in there. It down here at the bottom used change to make it so that the person, when they logged in, they would be forced to change their password. So like it did the things, but it can do better. So
Yeah.
let's change our query a little bit here. And actually, let me clear. All right, so I'm going to add a couple of additional customizations. One is I'm going to say set their password to a random 8-character value. And we can argue whether 8 characters is the right number or 20 characters. I don't care. But like you can put the number in there and it will honor the number. The other thing is log to a file. Let's say log to a file in my home. All right. So how do we do? All right, so here we go. Put it in my home directory. Cool. It changed the 8-character random password. Okay, good. And then, yeah, everything else looks pretty good. So a couple of things that I've seen it do, it has done things like here it used translate and dev-urandom to create characters or passwords. We could use I've seen it sometimes. In fact, in the previous one, it used hex. Let me pull that one up again. So when it uses OpenSSL hex, it's only making a password that includes hexadecimal values, which run between 0 and F.
Right.
So there's not a lot of variation there. There's not like uppercase characters. They're not specials. And so you might want to tell it something like using MK password to make a password that has like specific things that you need in your password requirements.
But I mean, if you're like, if it's sufficiently complex, right? And if you're making the user change it on the first login anyway, then, it's a pretty small window that somebody may be trying to brute force the thing.
Well, and they'd have to know also that it's how long it is and that it's
Right.
only half to really get an advantage on trying to brute force a thing.
Right. So if somebody found your script, then they'd be able to use that to seed their their random password generator
but if we wanted
brute force attempts.
It didn't use hex. We could use things like base64 encoding, right?
Yeah.
To tell it what algorithm to use when using it. Or like I said, we could use MK password with these options to tell it that this is the complexity of password I want. So there's, again, if you put more things in the prompt that are more specific, it does a better job at making the output. The last one I'm going to do is I'm going to add on another thing I thought about. I was like, oh, this would be kind of nice. How about this? Right. Whenever I try to do command line options, I always have to like look it up.
Yeah. Right. How do I do command line options here?
Right. And so here we go. Let's see what we get. So notice in the resulting script here, there we go. If admin, and then also if the argument isn't provided, it gives me the usage diagram, which now includes the admin flag that I asked for.
There you go. Look at that. That's cool.
Here to convert it back to hex, so I could add in like base64 to make it a little bit more complex, or something else to make it more complex.
Right.
But the real judge is down here, right? So earlier on, it said if the -- admin flag was used, then we wanted to add them, right? So it actually set an environment variable called admin, and then says if that's set, then go ahead and add them to the wheel group, right? And for those of you who are unfamiliar, by being a member of the wheel group, you are given root equivalents in the default sudoers file that comes with RHEL. So there you go. That's why I wanted to add them to the wheel group. But yeah, like pretty solid. How long did it take me to write this script?
Well, I mean, so right. How long did it take you to craft that prompt? Is my question.
So I would say we're going back and forth for maybe like 10 minutes, but I included all the discussion, right? So actual like clicky clacking on the keyboard and making some changes, less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And now I have like a really nice script that I can build off of if I want, or I could add a couple things, admin option, to have it rewrite it because I hadn't started using it for my task yet.
Cool.
All right. And then
I think the prompt needs more personality, though.
Oh, you do, huh? Okay, fine. I'll add in pirate voice.
Is it going to make the script in pirate voice?
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Ahoy there, matey.
Here be the script that'll do as ye ask. Yeah. So for the
There's
viewer,
background story here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's history. So about a year and a half ago, I was asked to make a demo of what it would look like if RHEL had some AI something in it. And I wrote a proof of concept that was implemented in Shell where I asked it to do different things, and it completed and sent out answers. And then just as like to be quirky, I said, and do it as your pirate. And so it like output the thing in pirate voice, just like you saw here. So this demo was done in front of the worldwide sales team at Red Hat. And it was probably about 5,000 people. And when they started doing pirate stuff, it was crazy town.
Yeah.
Crazy town. Everybody went crazy. And so that completely fake proof of concept inspired a bunch of work at Red Hat and some very talented engineers to actually do this work that we're using today.
Right.
And I was so excited to see that they had also supported pirate voice, like my original.
Yeah. That's an important thing. It's an important thing to have in your AI. It has to have some personality, or pirate voice at the very least.
Well, and somebody else in chat asked about feelings. We haven't gotten to the Blade Runner style yet, where it's like you see it in the desert. We haven't gotten to that yet. And in fact, if you ask how it feels, it says it has no feelings.
Right.
All right, I'm trying to find this other script. Can you ask to write a script for monitoring the file system, and if it exceeds 30%, it should trigger an email or something like that. All right, so let's try that.
It's important to get that right in your example. The typo there, yeah.
All right. All right, let's see what happens here.
Now we're going off script. We'll see if the AI is upset. It doesn't know our script, so I guess it doesn't.
Okay, so all right, that's good. We're like defining stuff in the beginning. I like it.
The threshold, yeah.
There's my email. All right, so
DF.
Let's just copy and paste this.
Path to your file system. That's not checking everything on the system. That's checking a specific path.
Okay. Let's see here. Slash. So that's looking at my percent used. All right, so let's see what this guy does. Because it's trying to flip it, I think, to, because it gets the percent used, and I think it's trying to calculate it back to like the percent free. All right, so df slash $FS usage for mine was, we got it from the previous rate, 19.
Sorry, I was busy replying to something.
Percent. Oh, I don't have BC installed. And it may come from another RPM. We'll see. No, that's good. All right, let's try one more time. All right, it doesn't like 19%, so why don't we do 19? Okay, so that comes back to a 0. All right, so I think it's me like copying and pasting and not having all the data that's causing it to do that. But here what it's doing is it's copying my free space percent and it's taking the used percentage and then transforming it to free space percent. And then here it says if the free space percent is less than threshold, which was 30.
Yep.
Yeah. So definitely it gave us a like, and here's your cron tab entry, Nate. And I think that's because we use the words to monitor, right? That it decided to make it a cron job. So while it doesn't do the exact file system, maybe I need to change it to all file systems. Or any. Let's try that. In any file system connected to the machine. And what we're looking for with this change is that it moves from like a specific directory to more like a df-a or something like that. Yeah, right here, fs list, right? So it's getting all of the file system output from df and then kind of looping over it and doing all the things. So yeah, there you go. Problem solved.
Cool. So we had someone in the chat I was just responding to ask how well this can do with troubleshooting issues on the system. And I said, we had that example earlier where we had passed the login and they said, no, specifically like if I just ask it, I have an error in my satellite after an upgrade. What's the root cause? Can you make a script to fix that? And the answer is unfortunately no. Like it can't go and identify problems for you. You have to do the work to at least figure out like where's the error in my log, and then you can pass that log into the command line assistant and say, I'm getting this error in my satellite log, can you help me fix it? And then it'll using our knowledge base entries hopefully be able to identify a knowledge base article or something that can help you resolve that problem. So it's not quite to the level of, hey, fix my problem, I'm going to go get some coffee. But so you still have to do some legwork. Maybe we'll get there. There's another roadmap item that's using a tool called MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is sort of like a way for an AI model to contact an agent on your system and interact with it, right? So there could be a day where the command line assistant can optionally interact with the system that it's running on, or maybe even another system on your network. But today that doesn't exist. And will it ever? I don't know, right? This is just a thing that I know that people have been talking about.
Yeah. So what the other thing I've done in that vein though is not ask it how to fix it, but I've done things like sent it an error message and said, what does this mean?
Right.
And that usually gets me a pretty good description of what that error is. The other thing I've seen people do, realize that this is the RHEL command line assistant. Right. And so it's really good at RHEL things. I had somebody at Red Hat, they were like, make me an Ansible playbook to do this pile of things. And then they were very disappointed in the output because the things they were asking for were not RHEL system role things.
Right.
They were like generic Ansible tasks that the person wanted. And Ansible actually has its own AI assistant for doing that stuff, and therefore was not included in the training materials for RHEL. So
right. Notice when I asked it in the earlier example, specifically, use a RHEL system role to do this thing. I knew it would generate Ansible, but I didn't ask it for Ansible. I asked it specifically for the RHEL system role output.
Yeah. So keep in mind, like, what we've done is gone out of our way to make it good at RHEL stuff. Maybe not all system administration stuff. Maybe not other people's product stuff. Maybe not other software available in the open source space stuff. It's good at RHEL stuff. All right. So I think that runs us off our list of.
I think it does. And we're almost at 1 o'clock. So
so Nate, next week you will not be with us.
I will not. I have vacation planned for next week. I will hopefully be on the other side of the state with my family, enjoying some time together. So I don't know what our topic's going to be. Have you thought of something, Scott?
It's called Title.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So
That's how all of our episodes start, by the way, guys.
You'll be stuck with just me doing Into the Terminal next week. But we will have an episode. I'll figure out what it is, and we'll get it posted probably midweek, just like we did this one with thumbnails.
Maybe you could bring that blue-haired guy on.
I mean, I guess, but like, will his manager let him do that?
I don't know. Maybe he's too busy. Too busy right now.
All right. So we'll have a show next week. And then the week after that, though, we actually plan an episode.
We did. We were going to talk about image mode stuff. Although we haven't really delved into the specifics yet, but we were going to, kind of maybe some introductory stuff on image mode.
So I think we'll cover image mode basics in 2 weeks. So next week we'll do a thing. I see some suggestions in the chat. Love it. Patching, troubleshooting. We actually have troubleshooting in the video section of the channel. There's a 4-hour supercut of all the troubleshooting episodes that we've done. So I would guess that if you've had a troubleshooting problem, you can probably find something about it in there that will guide you. But yeah, so we'll figure out what we're doing next week. We'll have it posted in the channel about midweek, so you guys will know whether you care or don't care to tune in. All right, so that's the end today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Nate, have a great time off next week.
Oh, I plan to.
Yeah, be in the woods or whatever it is that you do. Yep. And everyone, we'll see you later.
Have a great one, everybody.